Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and now we're going to be going on to notes 3 of our unit, which is setting up and factoring using the X. So, starting with our next note sheet, we're going to really get into factoring, which is a very important part of algebra. But before we do that, we want to kind of get prepared. We want to know kind of what we can do to get ourselves set up correctly. So before we really get going with the X, we need to understand quadratics. Okay, so a quadratic is a degree 2 polynomial, so that means that the highest exponent is 2. It typically has 3 terms. So quadratics are going to take the form ax squared plus bx plus c. That is known as standard or general form of a quadratic. The a coefficient is always with the squared term, so don't get confused if it's put in a different order. The a coefficient is always with the squared term, the b coefficient is always with the x term, and the c coefficient is just the constant. C is always the constant. So this is really important when we go through into setting up this x. So here's what the x kind of looks like. So on the top is going to be what I call the product. And to find the product, we need to multiply a times c. So our constant times our coefficient with the squared term. On the bottom, we're going to have the sum. And the sum comes from our b term, so the term with the x. And then on either side, what we're going to be finding are the factors. So once we find the factors, we've completed the x. So we're going to practice and setting up and using this x. So here are the steps. Before you even start the problem, some of the problems will have you practice. If you have an x, can you just solve it? But for the most part, I'm going to be asking you to actually set up this x. So you need to identify, before you do that, identify A, B, and C. So you can always look back at that note sheet to remember what A, B, and C are. Second step is to put A, B, and C into the x. So A times C goes in the top part, B goes in the bottom. Step number 3 is deciding what multiplies to the product and adds to the sum. What multiplies to the product and adds to the sum. Step number 4 then is to just simply write out your factors. So for today, we just want to get those factors written into our x. So let's take a look at ones where the x is already there. So we have 8, remember, is our product. 6 is our sum. So let's take a look at factors of 8. We have 1 and 8, 2 and 4. Those are our only factors. Which of those add to 6? Well, 1 plus 8 is 9. That doesn't work. 2 plus 4 is 6. Bam, that's what I want. So it doesn't matter what order I write it into the x. I just want to put a factor on each side. So 2 and 4. So go ahead and try this second one here. Okay, so what I want you to do, write out some factors of 15. In fact, I'll start for you. Figure out which one of those adds to 8. Put that in your factor box. This one, it can be kind of tricky. Sometimes our b is negative. Here's the thing you need to remember. For a product to be positive, it can also be the product of 2 negatives. So in order for the sum to be negative and the product to be positive, I know both of my factors have to be negative. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at 21, and I'm going to write out some factors of 21. Now remember, they're both going to be negative. So -1 plus a -21, that's a -22. So I can go ahead and write those in for my factors. So remember, if it's a positive product, negative sum, both your signs are negative. All right, let's take a look at numbers 4 and 5. So for number 4, you actually have to go through and you have to set up the x. So draw an x on your piece of paper. Up here is the product of A and C. So we're not looking at the s's, we're just looking at the coefficients. 28 times 1 gives me 28. My sum then is -11. So here's one of those cases, negative sum, positive product. Both my factors are negative. So let's take a look at 28. I have negative 1, negative 28, negative 2, negative 14. Negative 3 won't work, negative 3, oops, sorry, negative 4, negative 7. So I take a look at those, and I see negative 1, negative 28, that's negative 29, that does not work. Negative 2, negative 14, that's negative 16, nope, that doesn't work either. Negative 4, negative 7, that's negative 11, that's the one I want. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill in that X. Let's take a look at number 5. So number 5, we have to set up our X. So we're going to set up our X. So up here is the product. We're going to put A times C. So negative 15 times 1 is negative 15. Our sum is our B term, which is just 2. So now that we have it set up, we need to figure out the factors. Well, here I have a negative product. So the only way I can get a negative product is to multiply a negative times a positive. So this is going to make my factor list a little longer, because I can have negative 1, 15, 1, negative 15, 3, negative 5, negative 3, 5. So now I want to figure out which one of those adds to 2. So negative 1 plus 15 is 14, no go. 1 times negative 2, or negative 1 plus negative 15, negative 14, nope. 3 plus negative 5 is negative 2, close, but I'm looking for a positive 2. Negative 3 plus 5 is a positive 2. So negative 3 plus 5. Again, it doesn't matter what order you're putting things into the X, as long as you have the factors right. Remember, product on top, sum on the bottom. So I want you to go ahead and try these next two. Try 6 and 7. Note that when you set up number 6, you're also going to have a negative sum. So when you're setting up your X's, make sure that you're taking the signs with you. Okay, so go ahead and set those up. Pause the video, and when you're done, press continue. I'm going to do number 8, then I'm going to have you guys try number 9. So let's take a look at number 8. Set up our box. Our X. So we have, for the product, we're going to take negative 9 times 2 is negative 18. For our sum as our B term, we have negative 7. So now I want to take and write out factors of negative 18. So again, negative product means I have one of each sign. My sum is negative, so I'm going to want to have my bigger number be negative. But in case you don't remember that, you can still write out the factors this way. I have 1, negative 18, negative 1, 18, 3, 6, negative 6, negative 3, 6. I also have 2, 9, make one negative, 2, negative 9. So take a second, look through that list that I just created. Which of those pairs adds to negative 7? And the answer is this 2, negative 9. So my 9 is negative, my 2 is positive. You can always check your answer. Does this multiply to this? And does this add to this? Then you know you're right. What I want you to do right now is go ahead and set up number 9, and then I'm going to have you guys fill out your X. So congratulations, this was a really short video. Once you've done that, go ahead and take your quiz.